what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello and welcome to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. My name is Alan. Across from me is Chris.
Hello, everyone.
Chris, how's everything going with you today?
Things going well. Looking forward to our discussions today.
Yeah, we're ready to talk about some films and some upcoming film projects and some recommendations and all that fun stuff. What we do in our show, and we're going to keep to that same format this episode, is we will review two films today. The first will be the latest Mission Impossible entry into the franchise. It is Mission Impossible Fallout. Then we'll follow that up with a discussion about the documentary Won't You Be My Neighbor, which is about Fred Rogers, the eponymous Mr. Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood's children's show. Then we'll move on to some movie news items. We have a few trailers that were released recently that we're going to talk about and analyze and pick apart. Then we'll move into a couple other news items about some upcoming productions. And then we'll finish out the show with a recommendation of a film that we feel like you ought to go check out if you have a chance and you're looking for something to do in the upcoming weekend, or just a film you want to find online that maybe you might have overlooked or missed or forgotten about. So with that, Chris, we got a full show, a lot to go through. So why don't we just go ahead and jump right in and get started?
Let's do it.
All right. Our first review is the latest from Mr. Tom Cruise. It is Mission Impossible Fallout.
Your mission. Should you choose to accept it? I wonder, did you ever choose not to? The end you always feared is coming. And the blood will be on your hands. The fallout of all your good intentions.
In Mission Impossible Fallout, which is, by my calculations, the sixth Mission Impossible film. I think I got that right.
I think that's right.
Ethan Hunt and his IMF team, along with some very familiar allies, race against time after a mission gone wrong. That's the one-line summary. I'll expand on it just a little bit more. Ethan Hunt, obviously a member of the IMF. What does IMF stand for? Does you remember?
The only thing that I know it stands for in the real world is International Monetary Fund.
No, I don't think that's the name of their group. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm sure it has something to do.
Mission Force, Impossible Mission Force? That sounds
Let's go with
really
that.
hokey.
But you know what? Let's work with that for now.
This thing was developed in the 60s as the TV show, right?
Yeah, it could be.
So,
Could
Impossible
be.
Mission Force.
Well, the IMF team, we're presented at the beginning of the film where we see that a mission kind of goes astray and it actually leads to some very severe consequences for the world as a whole. And so Ethan Hunt and his team are really trying to fix this problem and trying to recover some lost items and making some alliances along the way. It's a typical Mission Impossible film plot-wise. Here's the things that are a little different this time around. We have a returning director for the first time, Christopher McQuarrie, who directed the last entry, which was Rogue Nation. So far in these 6 films, the first 5 were all by different directors. This is the first time we've had a returning director. I also think this may be the first one of the entry that actually starts to carry on some semblances of storylines from previous films. The previous 5 have been more or less standalone independent. This one does try to have some connective tissue to the previous films. We have Tom Cruise starring again as Ethan Hunt, the lead of this team, and he has been the kind of constant throughout the entire series, along with Ving Rhames, who also plays Luther Stickwell. He's also been in all 6 of these films now. Other than those 2, things change from installment to installment.
And Luther's like alligator hat or whatever, that's also been in all the...
I think the hat has been. It's listed in IMDb with a cast credit. So yes, I assume so.
Luther's hat. Yeah.
So Chris, with Mission Impossible Fallout, and I hate asking these questions in our reviews, but I don't see any way around it. This film is being touted right now as one of the best action movies ever made, one of the best movies this year, the best Mission Impossible of the entire series. That's a lot of praise to throw on this movie. You and I saw it last night. Still fresh on our brains.
Right.
Let me just ask you, pure reaction. Are we talking a lot of hyperbole here? Are we talking a lot of overdone hype for this film? Or do you think any of it is warranted from what you saw last night?
So, yeah, I think the hype train is in full gear. Is it the best Mission Impossible movie ever made?
Yeah, let's start with that question first. That may be the
I'd
easier
have to
one.
go back and review them because for me, regardless of how good these movies are, there have been 6 of them, I pretty much forget them the moment the credits roll and I walk out of the theater. Or in the case of Ghost Protocol, when I fell asleep on the couch, because that one didn't really hold my attention. But maybe it was because I was watching it at home.
I was going to say, I think
and
the
not on
key
the big
word
screen.
was on the couch. May
Right.
have been the problem there. Yeah.
The other installments, I think I actually did see in the theater. So for Ghost Protocol was the one I didn't see in the theater. But I just typically forget them. Interesting that you mentioned the whole, this is the first one that seems to actually make efforts to try to tie back themes from other movies or storylines. I was a little lost, not totally lost, but because I was reminded of things, but I was kind of surprised by that because usually, for example, a Star Wars movie, I'll review the previous installment before I go see it because I know, hey, I better refresh myself because, I've slept a couple of times in between seeing these movies. So for Mission Impossible, I didn't bother because, like you said, I didn't really think it would matter. It's it's Ethan Hunt running around saving the world. What more do I need to know? This one, yeah, maybe there were a couple of things you might have wanted to kind of refresh yourself on, but I thought that was a nice surprise.
Okay.
So in that aspect, maybe I think like you, and I think a lot of people that have, it's like the common opinion of the franchise. The third one that was directed by J.J. Abrams, I would say is probably the best. Maybe I'd have to go back and see it. But then falling right below that might be this one because I do like this one a lot. I think I like this one better than the one that came right before it. I think. But there again, I'd have to see it again. So that's kind of where it stands within the franchise. Where it stands within best action movie
Well, I was
going
going
to
say,
absolutely not.
I'm summing up what you're saying.
Sure.
The Mission Impossible franchise as a whole is pretty lower tier from your preference in general. But this may be one of the better ones of that group. But
correct. And full disclosure, as anybody who's ever listened to an episode of this show before, just the action genre, it's not what I typically go to the theater
It's not
for.
Chris's main thing.
So for me to say this, just because I'm not a good judge of. I mean, I can. For me, what makes a good action movie, but I don't typically seek them out. But if I was trying to be fair and say, how can you justify saying this isn't one of the greatest action movies ever made? Well, I think of something that I've talked about and recommended on the show within the past year, Atomic Blonde. That, to me, had more as far as one of the best action movies ever made. It was stylish in addition to the way the action was handled. Now, that's a whole point of discussion that we'll probably get to, and we'll discuss here on the show about Mission Impossible, the franchise, how action sequences are handled, and specifically how Mr. Tom Cruise handles the action sequences.
Sure.
So I've got some discussion points on that, but in general, that's my response to one of the best action movies ever made. Is not that it's a bad action movie, but I would not.
You don't put it up on a higher echelon at all.
Absolutely not. What's your take on
Sure.
some of those things?
I had a really good time with this film. I am generally more amenable to the action genre than you are. Right. I'm okay with 2 hours, in this case, 2.5 hours.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm okay with 2.5 hours of good action sequences stitched together with a very thin plot, or in this case, a very complex plot. I'm okay with that. I like James Bond films. I like 007 films. I like good thriller films. I like good action movies. And this was a very good action movie. I'm with you on where it falls in the Mission Impossible franchise.
Okay.
Number 3, the J.J. Abrams one is my favorite.
Okay.
I feel like it has more personality and it has more interesting dynamics to the film, very unique from the other ones. But this one is at second. I think it's better than the last 2 installments. I think it is better than Rogue Nation. It's better than Ghost Protocol. It's definitely better than number 2, which was the John Woo one, which was the worst. Really, I just don't think a good film. And it's better than the Brian De Palma original, which I like the Brian De Palma original for its style, but boy, oh boy, don't even try to get me to explain the plot of that movie. It is overly complex and confusing. So I generally like the Mission Impossible movies.
Got you.
I was more excited to see this one than I had been the last 2 or 3.
Interesting. Because of the returning director?
Because the returning director, because I'd heard that they were actually going to try to carry on some storylines, because it seemed to be more of an ongoing story as opposed to just, let's just put a whole bunch of action set pieces together and do something with it. Mm-hmm. I felt like there was actually more development in this film than we've seen the last couple. So I liked it. I had a good time with it. I thought it was a very good action movie. I will say the last 20 to 30 minutes of this film are great action. Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I loved the last 30 minutes of this film. I thought the middle sequence of the film, there was a lot of extra padding and a lot of stuff that should have been trimmed out and sped up. This movie could have been a lot shorter. But that last 30 minutes, I feel like was extremely, extremely exciting and fun. I had a great time with it. So overall, yeah, I liked the film. Had a good time with it. One of the better Mission Impossibles for sure. Is it one of the best action films? It's probably, for me, the best action film this year. But that's also saying I haven't seen that many true action films this year. Of all time, no, I can think of 10 right off bat that are much better. So, but it's still good. And maybe the marketing department got a little overzealous with some of their promotion of the film. But I do think it's a very, very good, well-made, very competently made action film that if you are a fan of this type of film, I think you'd really appreciate and have a good time with this.
What's interesting, too, I feel like, what happened to the good old days when movies could just come out and there wasn't backlash hype, or, there wasn't too much hype, there wasn't backlash hype, there wasn't backlash to the backlash, all this drama that seems to come out with movies now, like you have the whole Last Jedi type stuff. And with this film, prior to the movie even coming out, there was a lot of rumblings about, people just don't give the Mission Impossible franchise a fair shake. Mm-hmm. People are down on it because of Tom Cruise, and they just don't realize what a great franchise this is. All the movies are consistently good, and just all this hyperbole, like you mentioned. And I just saw several people giving it 5 out of 5 stars and all these type of things. And so, but me not being, like you say, such a huge fan of action movies, I'll see them, but I'm not, that big into them. And not being a huge fan of the franchise, I was kind of like, okay, this is going to be Citizen Kane of action movies. So,
I think that's a disservice. I think, unfortunately, that kind of hype is a disservice to the movie-going public, just like trailers can be. All that, it's tough. It's really tough to go into a film with no expectations and just to be going in with a blank slate and see what they put up on the screen for you. But I will say, to kind of counter that mentioning, while I feel like the hype is overdone, as I look at the overall body of work of these franchises, I try to think back on franchises that have been fairly consistently good movies. May not be the best of their genre, may not be top of the year, but consistently good. It's tough to have 6 films. Well, I say 5 out of 6 because I still think Mission Impossible 2 was garbage. But 5 out of 6 films in a franchise to be consistently good. Even the James Bond films, I don't think ever achieved that, because even though you'd have 2 or 3 really good, and then all of a sudden you'll just have a really bad dud film.
Right.
The Mission Impossible has been pretty consistent. And outside of Star Wars, outside of what Marvel's doing with their franchises, outside of, I guess recent James Bond with Daniel Craig, because the last couple have been good. They've been more good lately than not.
Right.
Outside of those 2 or 3 franchises, this is up there as far as quality, as far as I'm concerned. Does it do anything really interesting and daring other than what it tries to do with more authentic stunts? Not really, but but it is a good, well-made, fun, exciting thrill ride of a film that gives the audience kind of what it needs and what it's looking for there.
Well, I think I like originality in film. A lot of times, if anything, that's what kind of takes me out of the action genre, because I feel a lot of times, with the exception of something like John Wick, and I hear about that and I'm like, okay, this is supposed to kind of be a standout, or an Atomic Blonde. Okay, this is supposed to be different. I'll go see it. And I usually end up liking them. With this franchise, specifically with this film, but I think it's been slowly building since maybe Ghost Protocol, maybe? I can't. But the whole Tom Cruise do-it-yourself stunts. I don't know if he's done that from the very get-go or that came around between the fourth movie.
I can remember the very first Mission Impossible. You remember there was a sequence like in a train tunnel, horrible like chroma keys. Just you could tell it was not authentic at all, and I don't think it was authentic with a lot of the stunts in the second one with John Woo.
Okay.
I don't know about the J.J. Abrams, but I do think by Ghost Protocol, it's like, Tom Cruise is going to do his own stunts. And we're going to really make these about spectacle and big action set pieces that Tom is putting himself in constant danger to do.
Okay, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
With that, I kind of, there again, I feel like it's such a PR move. And by now it's kind of worn thin. Yeah. So unless Tom Cruise is doing the stunts for everybody in the movie, sometimes with a wig, it's not going to matter to me because it becomes more like a Discovery Channel Mythbusters where here's how this guy achieved this stunt. And it's distracting to me because it's like, okay, it takes me out of the movie because the way it's shot, you can tell because they don't use a lot of cuts in it. You're like, okay, yeah, that's really Tom Cruise and he's dangerously trying to climb up this rope. And I know he doesn't die because that would have made the news. So there's no thrill to it really. Now, why does he do this? In my head, it's kind of like, I wonder if he has kind of a Mel Gibson complex where Mel Gibson likes to depict, or so you hear, lots of close-ups of bloody violence and stuff like that because he thinks he wants you to really experience or whatever. Tom Cruise, it's like, I'm never going to get an Oscar, so I'm going to prove everybody how dedicated I am.
I have a theory.
It's like, it kind of drives me nuts.
Well, it doesn't bother me. Actually, I like it. And I'll tell you why, because I guess, and we've talked about Tom Cruise before.
Yeah.
I put everything personal aside. I try not to, when I'm evaluating somebody's work on film, I don't try to think about what I hear, gossipy, personal stuff, tabloid stuff, all that. You got to set that aside. Tom Cruise to me is the quintessential entertainer. Is he an actor? No, I don't think he's an actor anymore. I think he's an entertainer. Okay. And I think his whole goal in his career is to entertain and to have people see what he does and be admiring of what he does and be astonished by what he does. That's his role now. I think he's realized, like you said, he's not going to win the Oscar.
Right.
If he didn't win it for Magnolia, he's not going to win it.
Interesting you bring that up and you point to that. That's the one thing that you could say, what's a role that you liked of his? That's what I would pick out.
I mean, Magnolia, he didn't win the Oscar, and I think he should have because that was a brilliant performance. And there's been a couple other roles he's had where I thought, he was pretty good in that. Jerry Maguire, I thought he was really good as an actor. He's been a good actor in the past. He's an acceptable actor now. I mean, and that's something I'm going to talk, with this film, the last two films in particular. I mean, Tom Cruise has just been a placeholder for an archetype, Ethan Hunt, and it's been focused more on how much action and running can Tom Cruise do.
And that's fine, but you mentioned the last 30 minutes of this film. Tom Cruise Flight School with the really pathetic dialogue grated on my nerves. And that's where I was like, okay, I don't know if it's an example of bad script or bad acting or like...
All right, well, let's talk about this because I actually think this keys into something I thought was kind of interesting in the film. It's both a positive and a negative for me.
Okay.
The positive of it is I think they started to do something a little more interesting with his character in this film that I liked. But then my dislike is that they didn't go far enough with it to actually make it meaningful.
Kind of like, I think you pointed this out with maybe the previous film or some film that Tom Cruise, Edge of Tomorrow, where it's like he's fallible. He's not perfect. Like in this one, he gets hit with the motorcycle and falls down. And
no, but not even talking about the stunt side. This movie, and we won't get spoiler on it, but there is a plot line going on where he made a mistake. He did something that has now caused a really big issue for the world's safety.
Right.
And normally, I think this has happened in past Mission Impossible movies where something happened.
He saved Ving Rhames' hat.
That's right. The hat is saved.
He saved the hat.
I've seen past movies of his where his character does something that causes a big incident and now he's got to fix it. So that's not a unique approach. But I actually felt like this movie was the first time in a while that I've seen him actually seem like there's some level of remorse to it. There's some level of guilt. And then there's also a plot that kind of comes back in at the end that I think does elevate his role a little bit and develops his role a little bit, of a past character important to his life that does enter back into the scene, I think, in a kind of a interesting way that works for the plot.
If it hadn't been so telegraphed.
I didn't pick up on it.
Oh, man.
I didn't pick up on it at all.
It's just the fact of seeing too many movies.
No, I didn't pick up on it at all. And when I realized what was happening and setting up that last big action scene, I'm like, oh, that's okay. Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, it was telegraphed to me, which was too bad.
But even then, his character changed a little bit at that point. And I know you're commenting on him flying the helicopter in the last 30 minutes and it being a lot of him talking and kind of... I like that. I actually think it was, for once, I actually felt like Ethan Hunt was a human being and not an automaton that was just going through the motions and doing what Mission Impossible requires him to do. I wish they had gone deeper with it. I wish it had been a little more character development of him as an individual. Right. They hinted at it, and I really admired that they were going that direction, but I was disappointed they didn't go far enough along. And it came off as kind of half-baked what they're trying to do with this character.
And it didn't work for me, and maybe if they had committed more fully to it, maybe it would have worked for me. Maybe
I think it would have. I really do. And I think I was just happy to see something happening that was a little more on the character development side. Just disappointed that it just kind of petered out by the end. And I didn't really feel like we got quite the development from his role that we were getting a little hints of earlier in the film.
I think, to say the action sequences are bad, I don't think that's true. It's just I didn't respond to them, and maybe it's just the whole nagging. This is him really doing his own stunts.
I think that got in your head a lot more. It was
distracting. It took me out of the film. To say the sequences are bad is not true. The helicopter stuff, the beginning, it's just I jumping out of a plane. Fallout.
Yeah,
he fell out of a plane. So there's stuff there, but the thing is, what affected me the most, and you hear all these scenes hyped, and got in my head, didn't enjoy them, or just was kind of thought they were tedious. The thing that stuck out to me the most was, without spoiling anything, there's an important scene that takes place in a bathroom. I like that. Mm-hmm. I thought that the fight choreography, the stuff that happened, it was, and it had a little bit of Tom Cruise not always getting everything right.
Yeah, actually, that was the first time in the film where we saw, he not only has he kind of messed up, right, I'm talking like the first 10 minutes, right. His team makes a mistake and it causes some repercussions. But and then the bathroom fight scene, which I do agree was pretty exciting.
That was my favorite in the film.
And it did start to show some real, him being a human being, something kind of goes a little wrong. They kind of get blindsided by somebody they're fighting. I mean, just a lot of things. It was I'm not a perfect secret agent and can just do everything miraculously. Things are actually happening to me, and I'm kind of getting the crap beat out of me a few times too. That started to happen. That was encouraging to me. And then I do think, all right, and you're probably going to roll your eyes at this scene, but I thought it worked for me. There was a scene where we have Ving Rhames actually having a discussion with Rebecca Ferguson's character.
Spoiler, she is in this movie.
She is in this movie.
The previews, she's going to be.
And I like her a lot. She was a little less used in this film than she was the last one, and I wish we'd had a little more for her to do, but I thought she was still, when she was on the screen, she was really good.
The scene you're referring to, I am rolling my eyes a little bit about that, and that's because I think I can point to that as some of the reasons why things were telegraphed.
Okay, I didn't pick up on that.
Machinery, and I could hear the machinery ticking along.
My thing, though, is that was where they're starting to pull. They have a dialogue about Ethan, and it kind of filled in some gaps for me as far as what's transpired with him in his personal life, which I didn't quite remember. Maybe that was hit on in the previous films. I didn't really remember it. But it started to get a little bit of a semblance of why he is the way he is. Again, promising. I just wish it had been explored more deeply in the rest of the film. But again, I do applaud that there at least were some elements to want to break him out of that mold and do something a little bit more of a development with his character. So, I liked where they were trying to go. I was just disappointed they didn't go far enough with it.
I can say it didn't work for me. There was something else that I thought was kind of surprising. A lot of big names in this. Angela Bassett is one. She has some voiceover towards the end of the film that I was like, what what are you doing? Like, why are you narrating this little it just
Yeah, that didn't really make any sense.
Didn't work, and I was surprised. But like you say, Rebecca Ferguson being in it, I liked her character in the previous film. She was good in this. Simon Pegg, I always like him anyway. He's good in this. Henry Cavill. Let's talk about Henry
Let's
Cavill.
talk about him.
I liked him. I thought he was good, but I thought he was from a different movie.
I was totally cool with that because I actually like here's the thing. One of my big dislike of the film is outside of some of the supporting characters. I think the villain is always typically weak in these films. This is not where, at least with the James Bond films in the past, they've had villains with a little more you just remember them.
Right.
Like, for example, in Skyfall, Javier Bardem.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Great villain. And like you walked out of the movie, you remembered the villain.
Right.
Mission Impossible movies, I can't really remember any other villain. And this movie,
I can't either, but I thought that was just because I'm not a huge fan of the series.
No, it's really not. It's just the villains have never been the key point, except Philip Seymour Hoffman in Mission Impossible 3. That's why I love that movie so much, is probably because it has such a memorable villain and he's so good in that role. So, all right. Henry Cavill plays kind of the antagonist to Ethan Hunt. They're paired together, and he's there as kind of a checks and balance kind of guy for him. So they're different personalities. They have different styles of getting the job done. He's meant to be there as kind of that antagonistic relationship with him.
Right.
And I thought he was having a blast with that role. Henry Cavill was. Yes, it did seem a little out of place from the rest of the film. And that's fine because it was somebody memorable, somebody with a really interesting personality.
It was just like
in a different style altogether.
Yeah, see to be anywhere else, and not that it was bad, and he didn't do a bad job acting. I was just kind of like, huh.
I really like. I think Henry Cavill was having a really good time with this role. I liked him better.
This was the mustache that caused a problem.
It was. This was the mustache that caused Justice League all the CGI redo and all the angst they got for that. I like him so much better in this film than I did any of the Superman roles he's played so far. He seems to be having more fun with this role. I liked him better in this role.
Okay. So
yeah, he's a strength for me. Rebecca Ferguson's a strength. I think Tom Cruise is a strength as an entertainer. I'm one who is pretty amazed by the stunts and the action scenes. They still get me. I'm still good with that. And I'm kind of bought into the hype on that. I just thought the villain or villains were weak in general. I just think not as memorable as I wish they were. And I hate that they hinted at this character development for Ethan Hunt. The main character just never really followed through with that, never really embraced that. That was my big takeaways as far as some things I wish they would have done differently. I would love to see a Mission Impossible movie where they have a really amazing bad guy, someone who's ambiguous and conflicted and an interesting charisma, and we just haven't had that. I mean, again, the last two movies, I couldn't tell you anything about the villains from there. And like you, it took me a while to even realize that the villain at the beginning of this film is the same one that was from the last movie.
Right.
Like, I didn't remember that because I didn't remember him from the last movie. So that's my issues with the film. It's definitely not a perfect film. I think there's some things they could have improved on, but I think the action is really strong. I think this is probably the more competently made Mission Impossible film. And I think they had some interesting traces of things they were trying to do with the franchise that I wish they had followed up on a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm on that. I liked it a little less than you.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm not as big a fan of the franchise. Or the genre. So, yeah.
I will say this. If you're a fan of action movies, if you're a fan of the Mission Impossible movies, absolutely, yes, you will love this movie.
My summer, not necessarily memorable, but it's definitely enjoyable.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
If you're not a fan of action movies, or if you're looking for something a little more unique and a little different, you're not really going to find it here. Okay. This is pretty much, copy and paste from previous films, but let's bump it up a little bit more. Let's get a little better action. Let's get a little better storyline, maybe. And that's what we've got. So,
right.
Okay.
Agreed.
Great. Good enough. Mission Impossible Fallout is starting today as of the day we're recording this. I'm sure it'll be out for quite a while. And it'll be at, I'm sure, any multiplex nearby that you may have in the coming weeks.
And I'll say, to key off my complaint of Ghost Protocol, if you are interested, do go see it in the theater.
These are definitely theater movies.
Because,
they are not
action sequences that, some of the ones that Alan was really responding to, Yeah, they do look interesting and incredible, but seen at home on the small screen, probably not as impressive.
Now that you mention it, I think Ghost Protocol is the only one I have not seen in the movie theater either. I saw it at home, and I was a little less than enthusiastic about it, and I think that may have something to do with it.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, let's move on to a film that is a very different type of film, but is another, just like I see Tom Cruise as kind of a hero in cinema, the quintessential entertainer. We have another hero in my mind of the American culture, and that's Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, documentary about him titled Won't You Be My Neighbor?
I'm not feeling blue right now, though.
Me neither.
Won't you be my neighbor? Well, I suppose it's an invitation. It's an invitation for somebody to be close to you. The greatest thing that we can do is to help somebody know that they're loved and capable of loving. Won't you please, won't you please won't you be my neighbor?
Won't You Be My Neighbor, the latest by Morgan Neville, the director who actually won an Oscar for 20 Feet from Stardom. He does give us an exploration of the life, lessons, and legacy of the iconic children's television host, Fred Rogers. And on the previous episode, we reviewed an action movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then we reviewed a documentary, RBG, about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This episode, we've done an action film in our first segment, and here we are doing a documentary in the second segment. How do you feel Won't You Be My Neighbor captures Fred Rogers and lends itself to be a documentary as opposed to a narrative? And, you know, as far as what you got out of RBG, you discussed, what did you get out of Won't You Be My Neighbor?
Sure. So this was a good documentary that I think is aided enormously by a sense of nostalgia that many people in the audience are going to have.
I mean, this thing is rated something like 99% Rotten Tomatoes right now. So,
and it's a well-made documentary.
Okay.
It is very clear. Of course, we're talking about Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, the children's show that ran for many, many years. Fred Rogers was the star of that show. The documentary does take us from the early days of him getting involved in children's television to begin with, kind of deciding between becoming a pastor or going into television. And then you see the progression of the show and how it became bigger and more popular and more influential. And then his decision, later on to stop doing the show and kind of the legacy that's being left behind afterwards and after passing his passing. It's very clear the director, and I think this is evident in 20 Feet from Stardom as well, is very much in love with the subject of his documentary.
Gotcha.
And that's fine, because if we're going to love anybody, it needs to be Fred Rogers. However, I do feel like the documentary, while a great documentation of his show and him as a person, there wasn't a lot of meat to it. I felt like I was watching maybe a very, very well done film about his legacy and his foundation and his things that are left behind from the people that were very involved in his life. Would I have liked to have seen a little more, maybe some understanding of why what really drove him to use television as the channel he wanted to use? It was alluded to, it was mentioned kind of in passing, but I never really felt like I understood why this show format, why this vehicle, as opposed to other ways I could have impacted the lives of children and education. I would have liked to see a little more of that. This is a subject matter where I don't think, at least not from the film, it did not seem like the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood show ever faced any real challenges.
Well, and the one that they did was one of the more interesting points of the film. Not necessarily the show, but public television overall was facing a funding question.
Funding cut, yes. But, Mr. Rogers' role in it, there was no real, I never got a sense of challenge. Right. And now, there again, I don't want the documentary to artificially make challenges if they're not there. So he really, it seemed like he had I created a show, it caught on. People really responded to it. It grew. Yes, PBS in general had some funding shortage challenges, but we overcame that, and we continued to make the show great, and then I can walk away gracefully. There's not a lot of drama there. There's not a lot of challenge. There's not a lot of things that would make a narrative. So the idea of making a narrative of this, no, there's no need for it. It's, the whole reason you would watch a narrative is there's got to be conflict. There's got to be drama. There's got to be stakes. And there wasn't any.
Sure.
But as a documentary, if this is telling the true story of the evolution of the show, it did that just fine. I couldn't help but sometimes feeling like I was watching more of a very high production level, not a like an in memoriam type film about Fred Rogers. And again, I got the same sense from 20 Feet from Stardom, where the director was very much enamored by the people he's trying to profile. And we don't need to go into any too much challenges. We don't need to go too many warts that may be there. But again, I don't think with Fred Rogers, there probably wasn't really any to go through. So,
sure.
It's tough. It's a very, very good documentary. I do think it's going to speak a lot more to people who have the nostalgic feel for the show. Somebody who's not familiar with the show, I just don't know if they're really going to get much out of this.
Yeah, I'd agree, because I think, in a sense, if you don't have the relationship with the show, because the documentary, while good, I feel like it is surface. So if you don't have that nostalgia there to help your understanding of what they're talking about, or to help you appreciate the behind the scenes, the little that you do, then it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
The nostalgia with this film, although, I hadn't thought about Fred Rogers in I don't know how long.
Sure. Yeah, same here.
Probably since I was in, elementary school was the last time I even thought about Mr. Rogers. But the nostalgia factor definitely played a part in my enjoyment of the film. I did like it quite a big deal. I don't think I have cried as much in a documentary. I don't think I've cried as much in a documentary ever. And I don't remember having problems not crying in a movie theater as much as this ever.
Wow.
And I think it comes down to, it was nostalgic for the material, but even though this film is not political, we live in, obviously, kind of charged times where there's a lot of disagreement, and there's a lot of tension. And this film, obviously from the title, Won't You Be My Neighbor? Which, the answer is usually, yes, sure. Thank you for asking.
Well, it'd be nice if it was.
It'd be nice if it was.
I don't think we hear that answer quite as often as we'd like.
Just civility and just seems like in today's discourse, a lot of times it's not there. And so my fondness for that and my nostalgia for, quote unquote, air quotes here, simpler times or a simpler way of handling things, it did cause me to really respond to the film. Sure. That being said, interestingly enough, I don't remember as a child watching the show, and granted, you and I would have missed this window, but the show brings to forefront the fact that they dealt with racism, they dealt with assassination, they dealt with divorce, they dealt with death. As a kid, I think I missed some of those episodes because those were earlier on, like the Kennedy assassination. Right. I missed some of that because I wasn't watching it when those things were happening.
You and I were in there more in the mid 70s, late 70s type of time frame.
Right, so it probably was really groundbreaking and really profound during that time period to be mentioning that kind of subject matter. What I do remember, the thing about death, I do remember one of his goldfish dies in the aquarium. I remember watching that episode. I remember that and I was like, I do remember that. So, it, like you were saying, I'll respond to that. It felt more like a memorial service than a documentary. Yeah. That being said, not that it's not well made.
Oh, it's a very, very well done film. Documentary to memorialize Fred Rogers, memorialize the show, and to give us a good overview and understanding of the show. I just, I like documentaries. I come away feeling like I learned something. I didn't feel like I learned a lot here, but I remembered a lot and got a lot of warm feelings from the film, which is just as good. Hey,
sure.
I'm great with any film I can come out of feeling better about the world, feeling better about people, or trying to feel better about the world.
Right.
So this definitely does that. It's just, again, as a documentary, it's like I just didn't feel like I learned a whole lot.
Well, you and I have talked off air, but how they use some sequences of animation.
Oh, yeah.
And at first, I I was kind of like, well, that's interesting. Don't really know why they're doing that. But the more they repeat the animations, Fred Rogers is kind of personified as this little lion or tiger.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Which one's the one with stripes, lion or tiger?
Tiger has stripes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so he's personified kind of as this little, tiger character, and they always kind of use that as a stand-in for him. And the little you do learn about some things of his childhood and how he would be that puppet on the show, you're drawing some conclusions on your own, which, usually a documentary kind of states some more facts, and you're like, okay, I can take this away. But I did find that was interesting. And like you were saying, I wish there was more of that background. And it's not to say they don't have the interviews. They interview his widow. Yeah. They interview other people that worked on the show. They interview some of his children, which I think some of their comments might have been more revealing or eye-opening, whether they just hit the cutting room floor or whether they just didn't. I don't know. I felt like I'll say this.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't know because you don't know what, but it feels like there was not enough distance to be willing to maybe infringe on the legacy.
Yeah.
We had talked about with RBG, they pointed out she made the slip up where she talked bad about President Trump, and she realized or candidate Trump at that point, and realized, you know what, I shouldn't have done that. And that kind of said, okay, they're not trying to set her up too much on a pedestal. And while they, not that they were necessarily doing that with Fred Rogers, but they didn't give you enough. He was almost like an angel. They didn't give him any kind of faults.
Well, it's humanizing. Right. That's the thing, is I think RBG did a better job of humanizing and educating. Again, I didn't know anything about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, hardly at all.
Sure.
And I learned an hour and a half's worth easily. And I also felt like I got more of a sense of her being human as opposed to this mythical character, this Supreme Court justice that we don't know anything about. Fred Rogers, I felt like I kind of knew from the show.
Right.
And I don't feel like I got to know him a whole lot more with this film.
No.
I do think the animation sequences were well done. I do think some of the illusions about his childhood were interesting.
Sure.
Here's what I think would have been really interesting.
Okay.
There's a point in the film where they talk about, I think it's close to either the show stopping or maybe his funeral around then, where some people were protesting.
Yes.
Saying, listen, he's hurting our kids. He's teaching our kids that they're all special, and he's hurting. We didn't really hear anybody talking up those points like from that side of the coin.
Right.
There was no interviews of somebody saying, this is why I felt like there was some problems, or this is why I felt like this was bad for us. And again, whether you wanted to believe them and agree with them or not, sometimes having that voice in a documentary like this to show that, there were some real people who had some real issues with this, and this is how they had to try to get through this.
Right.
We didn't get that. We got some newsreel footage, we got some photographs, and we saw people were protesting, but they were just faceless, nameless entities, and I don't really feel like we got a sense of there being some true people in this country that did feel like the show was a disservice to children. I mean, I'm not one of those, and I don't think most people are, but there are some people who felt that way. And I think it'd be interesting to have explored that more and to hear from them. RBG, we did hear from some people that were against her politics and against her, and kind of explained why they felt like maybe sometimes her actions have been damaging to their cause.
Right.
We didn't really get that in this film. So I would have liked more of that. But I hate being demanding of things I want to see in a documentary about someone that did so much good for the world and which is such an amazing person. I hate saying, I wish they would have talked about bad stuff about it too. No, I'm not looking for that. I just want to understand more. And I guess that's where I came away feeling like I just didn't understand as much as I wanted. I remembered and I admired. Mm-hmm. I just didn't understand as much as I liked. So, yeah. Okay. So that's Won't You Be My Neighbor? Anything more to add, Chris? I mean, are we good?
I think we encapsulated. We both say we like it, but maybe from a nostalgia standpoint, it's a strong, higher rated film than if you... Yeah, as far as looking at it as a documentary.
Right.
So.
That's kind of the way I look at it there, for sure. So that's Won't You Be My Neighbor. Was playing at some bigger theaters. I know it was playing in our local multiplex, which was very surprising.
I think just the mere fact that, it was so high rated and it was getting a lot of buzz. So
hopefully, even wherever you live, you got a chance to catch up with this. But if not, I would imagine by fall of this year, it should be available online to check out. So I mean, especially if you remember seeing the film as a kid or seeing the show as a kid. Yeah, you need to see this film. It's worth seeing. If you didn't see the show, you for whatever reason, I don't know if you get a lot out of it, but it may be worthwhile if you just want to kind of explore somebody who did have some real influential power on education and child development and television in general. So that's Won't You Be My Neighbor. All right, Chris, we're going to take a really quick break, if that's okay with you.
Sounds good.
I got to go fill up my coffee and get ready for the next round. We're going to come back and we're going to do our news items. So we've got a couple things to talk about, some trailers we're going to discuss, ones that were released with coinciding with the San Diego Comic-Con recently. It'd be interesting to kind of see some thoughts on some of those new trailers. A couple other news items, and then we'll move on to our recommendations for the show. Stay tuned. We'll be right back here on Footcandle Films.
We'll get back to your show in a moment. Just a reminder, you're listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Find out more at themesh.tv and give us feedback on what you like. And now, as promised, back to your show.
We're going to do a little bit of trailer roundup, as Alan teased before the break.
Yeehaw! Trailer roundup.
Trailer roundup, right. So there's an event out in San Diego, California, you may have heard of, Comic-Con. And as much as you would think that would be about comic books, which it is.
Used
that
to be.
is an element. They also do a lot of, it's a big time of year for them to release TV show teasers or things that they're developing, and also, obviously, movie trailers.
Yeah.
So I've got 4 movie trailers that I think basically came out because of Comic-Con. They had a panel afterwards where they discussed how great the movie was going to be. So let's discuss
A lot of
those.
exciting insight that comes out of those panel discussions about how great their film's going to be and how excited they are to work on it. So, no, I'm not being snarky at all, but it is kind of ridiculous watching some of those panels sometimes. But,
Right.
Yeah.
So first one we're going to talk about is the highly anticipated movie that I know Alan and his son are both one of his sons are both looking forward to. Jason Momoa in Aquaman, hitting theaters this December.
Yep.
So we're not going to have to wait until 2019. This one,
Nope.
This one's coming up. Alan, your response to the Aquaman trailer? Yeah, that's pretty much it.
So, all right. The DC universe, of course, which Aquaman resides in. Yeah, we were introduced to Aquaman in Justice League, which I did not care for. This trailer,
I don't think I can blame that on him necessarily. The movie was just a mess.
He seems like an interesting actor embracing this role, but the movie looks like more of the same from Batman versus Superman and Justice League. I think they try to put a little more emphasis on humor in the trailer, and I just don't think it works. So it's a giant CGI spectacle. I'm sure the last 20 minutes are just going to be a giant underwater CGI battle. Not really interested. Not very excited. Nope.
Yeah, I'm same boat with you. And I really, it's like, I don't know what it would take to fix the DC universe. Although, Wonder Woman worked.
No, I do. I think we have an idea, and we'll talk about it in another trailer here.
But Aquaman, like, he is kind of a goofy character. I mean, I get it, but if somehow they could embrace that and either make like a serious movie or just make it completely, silly, I guess. Yeah. But other than those two routes, I don't really know how you can make make a movie about Aquaman that's going to work. And unfortunately, I don't think this one's going to work. Yeah, the trailer just roll your eyes bad. But maybe I'll be surprised. Maybe they'll turn it around. But I don't think Aquaman. It's one of the things actually. After Justice League came out, I'm kind of surprised somehow this didn't go straight to DVD or something, because it's just, I guess they spent so much money.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I think they've got a lot riding on it.
So
let me just wrap this up this one by saying, somebody I follow on Twitter is a guy I knew from college. He's a head writer on Saturday Night Live. His name's Brian Tucker. He put up a post, which I think is perfect. He's pretending like a fake meeting with DC Films and the casting director. DC Films says, we're finally making an Aquaman movie. The casting director says, great. So I'm looking for a trim blonde guy, right? And the DC film says, no, ask yourself, what would it look like if a professional wrestler opened an incense shop in Portland? That's Jason Momoa in this film, so which is true. He's not what you would envision for Aquaman. I admire them for going and doing something different with the way he looks and his character, but I don't have a good feeling about this.
Just kind of the way that when you saw the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom trailer, you're like, yeah, that looks like a mess, but maybe something about the trailer, maybe it's going to redeem itself, and no, the movie was a mess. This kind of gives me the same feeling that this looks like a mess.
Well, I didn't come out of the trailer feeling like there was anything redeeming about it. I didn't feel like, oh, there may be something interesting here. I'm like, nope. Actually, this trailer probably led me further down the path of saying, yeah, this isn't going to work. My son, who is pretty enthusiastic about a lot of films, my 11-year-old son, goes with me to see just about every big action superhero movie or so. Even when I mentioned that there was an Aquaman trailer, he's like, ugh. He saw the trailer. He's like, yeah, I'm not excited. So for my 11-year-old to say, nope, I'm not into it.
That's their target market.
That is. And that's not good.
Not a good sign.
Yeah.
So not to be completely disparaging of the DC universe.
Sure.
We have given, compliments to Wonder Woman. The next trailer they released at Comic-Con that I was aware of came also from DC, and it was Shazam. Mm-hmm. Alan, thoughts on this trailer? How do you feel about this?
I feel infinitely better about DC films seeing the Shazam trailer than I ever did with the Aquaman trailer.
Okay.
So Shazam, for those don't know, it's actually a young boy is granted kind of a mystical power by some ancient godlike character to where he can at any time utter the word Shazam and he transforms
becomes a superhero.
He becomes what's technically is Captain Marvel back in the old DC days, but Marvel has the copyright for the name Captain Marvel. So now they just call him Shazam, which is Shazam was never his name.
That's just history. What he used to become.
That's right. But now that's had to become his name because, well, they can't call him Captain Marvel anymore. Anyway, side note on that. This trailer was fun. This trailer had more energy than any of the other DC movies I've seen. I think Wonder Woman was a very, very good DC movie. This one looks really interesting. My curiosity is whether it's going to stick with the whole comedic angle, because that's pretty much all the trailer was comedy once Shazam showed up.
Right.
Or if there's going to be some real stakes and seriousness involved or not. It's basically Big, the movie Big in the superhero universe. And I'm fine with that. I mean, again, that's what Shazam is. That is the story. And I think this looks like a lot of fun. So I'm actually excited for this one.
Surprisingly enough, not that I expected to be wowed by the Aquaman trailer because I didn't, but I went in thinking, okay, how are they going to try to make this better after Justice League? And the answer is, well, I don't think it's going to be better. Mm-hmm. Shazam, you talk about low expectations. I was like, that just sounds ridiculous. I mean, just Shazam just sounds dumb. It's like,
they even joke about the word, like the young boy is told the name by this ancient character and he hears the word Shazam. He just starts laughing. He's like, are you serious? So
right, it's like
they're having fun with it.
Shaquille O'Neal made
Kazam.
So it's kind of like, yeah, you just can't take it seriously. And then I saw the trailer came out from Comic-Con. I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess I'd heard they were doing a movie. And then I watched the trailer, and I kind of fell in the category with you. I'm like, that actually seems kind of fun.
Yeah.
And if anything, it's like they took, Aquaman. Yeah, that's a ridiculous idea. Let's make a movie. And it's not working. They looked at the ridiculous idea of Shazam and were like, okay, here's how we can do this. And yeah, if they follow through on what the trailer seems to promise, that it's a lighter type of DC movie where it's kind of, played for laughs and stuff, I think it can work. I'm actually interested in seeing Shazam.
Zachary Levi plays the adult Shazam, the actual character that the young boy turns into. The young boy, Billy Batson, played by Asher Angel, who I'm not really familiar with, but I do know that I think his friend who he is moved into a foster home with, Freddie Freeman, is played by Jack Dylan Grazer, who I believe is played in It, was in the movie It, one of the kids there. Keep in mind, too, Mark Strong is in this as the villain.
Okay.
I think Mark Strong's pretty good. So I'm
I
anxious to see
typically
that.
like Mark Strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's usually pretty good. And he can definitely play a villain. So,
The film is directed by David F. Sandberg.
and I'm not familiar with him at all.
So he has mainly done horror films.
Oh.
Yeah, he did the film Lights Out. Do you remember the little short
I
film?
saw the
And then
short
they did the
version.
feature of it. He did both of those. He did one of the Annabelle movies. So yeah, he's more of a horror film. So to go from horror to this makes me think that, yes, this is going to be primarily comedic and fun and light, but I think there's probably going to be some creepy moments in it too. Just my gut feel would be based on his history. So
Well, and
I'm excited about Shazam now.
I am too, and
Yeah.
I never would thought I would be.
Sure.
So I do have to wait until 2019 for that. It's April.
Yeah, got
April
a little ways.
2019. So I'll be interested to see.
Maybe it'll wash away whatever the Aquaman.
I'm saying, okay, listeners, unless you write in and really ask us to give our hard-earned money to go see Aquaman, I think Alan and I are probably going to skip it.
No, I'll probably still go see it.
Really?
I mean, well, if
I
I
think
still
I
have,
will- I
if I
think
still
I
have
will
Movie
skip it.
Pass or whatever kind of movie Pass thing is, if it still exists by then, I mean, why not? No, I'm curious, but I'm expecting it to be bad. Okay, I still may find. Believe me, I've sat through some really bad superhero CGI movies, so I'll go give it a shake just
Okay.
because that's kind of the person I am. But I may come out just shaking my head. I don't know.
Well, if you're going to see it, then I guess I'll have to. But I'm not looking forward to it.
No, I'm definitely not looking forward to it.
but-
Shazam, I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and so April 2019 is the release on that. So
Yeah, great.
maybe it will wash away the taste. Following up on that, in May of 2019, we just got a trailer also from Comic-Con of Godzilla King of the Monsters. Alan, I know you are a big Godzilla fan. We reviewed the new installation of this a couple years ago when it came out. And so this is the follow-up to that new revitalization of the Godzilla franchise. This has a different director. Was Colin Trevorrow, did he do Godzilla? Or
Oh, no. It was,
not Trevorrow.
no. Oh, intern.
Yeah.
What do we
right.
got?
But they don't have the same director, which I thought was kind of surprising.
No, I saw on the tip of Gareth Edwards,
Gareth Edwards.
who's Rogue One.
I was like, he's done something with Star Wars.
And he did that kind of more smaller film Monsters years ago, too.
Right. So
Yeah.
kind of surprised that Gareth Edwards is not on this, especially
Yeah.
after that one was successful. But Alan, having watched the trailer, what are your feelings on Godzilla King of the Monsters?
So, I keep refreshing.
hesitance.
I keep refreshing my browser to see when they will start selling tickets to this film. I know it's speaking my language, and is that language for everybody? Maybe not, but I love this kind of movie. I like the fact that they seem to be taking, at least they did with the previous one, the Gareth Edwards one, a little more of an artistic view, a style to it, a little more. I hate even saying the word grounded in realism because we're talking about a giant walking lizard and now a giant moth and a giant dragon. But it is grounded in more reality than we've probably seen these films be in past generations. So I'm excited. I'm probably shamelessly setting myself up for a disaster on this, and I could come away very, very disappointed. But I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. They've talked about expanding the Godzilla universe, and this film would obviously do that because at least 3 kind of historical creatures are being introduced in the trailer. It's got some great actors involved, so I'm excited about that. Kyle Chandler.
Are they going to die within the first 5 minutes?
Well, I don't know. Maybe Bradley Whitford. Millie Bobby Brown, I'll be curious to see if she can do anything outside of Stranger Things because we really haven't seen her do anything else.
I don't
Vera Farmiga, Sally Hawkins is in it.
Yeah.
Kyle Chandler. I mean, I consider me excited. I'm really anxious to see what happens here. I did really like the Godzilla from 2015, 16. I don't know. It's been the last 3 years or so. The Gareth Edwards one I thought was
Right.
really good and fun. So hey, you had me at giant lizards stomping around the city.
Right.
Okay.
I think I'm going to say, for the sake of argument, that just like with Mission Impossible Fallout, I think I probably gave the Godzilla probably 3 stars. It was kind of like, it's okay,
Yeah.
it's not memorable, but it's enjoyable. I have a feeling that I'm going to fall in the exact same place with this movie. It's just not in my wheelhouse.
Well, but Chris, I'll take a 3-star out of 5 feedback from Chris Fry on a Godzilla movie
so
any
picky.
day of the week.
Well,
so
I'll give you that.
if you come out with a 3, I'll consider that a success.
The warning signs for me, actually, the cast of actors is a pretty big warning sign because I think it's instead of content or a convincing story, it's like, well, let's just get a lot of famous people so they can be in a movie for their kids. Kind of like I felt the first one. There was a wasted actress in the first one or maybe it was an actor. I don't know. I can't even remember if it was a man or a woman. That's how forgettable. But something happens to them and they're disposed of. And then it was just like they were a really huge name that was touted. So it was like, and they were gone in the first 10 or 15 minutes.
I like that. But yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying.
Well, it's just, yeah. And with this film, it actually was a red flag for me that Millie Bobby Brown is in it at all. Because it's like, hey, kids, remember her from Stranger Things? And I'm like,
You've seen her on TV before.
You might have seen her in.
You might have dressed like her for Halloween. Who knows?
So that actually, to me, was a little bit of a warning sign. I will say, some of the story things that they say in the trailer were as eye-rolling and cringe-inducing as Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom or whatever. I was just like, oh, come on. However, I will say, the visuals they do of some silhouettes of different creatures, cinematography-wise, yeah, that stuff does look really cool and really beautiful, some of that stuff. So will I look to see this one? Yeah, probably just because I want to see how they do it. Because unlike Aquaman, I'm at least a little bit interested in it. So yeah, I had a feeling you were probably going to be just gung ho excited about it. So
yeah, I mean, if you want to plan on joining me for my 3rd or 4th screening, that might be kind of a good idea because the first 2 I'll be there. I kind of want to watch it on my own, and then
sure, yeah.
So we'll work that out. No, I'm going into it, unfortunately, setting myself up for a failure. So I'm doing it to myself.
Sure.
I realize that. So I will say I went into the Godzilla, the Gareth Edwards one with moderate expectations, not expecting a whole lot, and came out really pleased.
Right.
This one, I'm unfortunately going in a little higher, so it may be bad. We'll see.
So, saved, I guess, spoiler, what I'm assuming or I think is the best for last. They released a trailer
When you say the best for last, are you saying the best trailer for last or just the best topic of discussion for last?
Yes, to everything you just said.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. They released a trailer for M. Night Shyamalan's next movie, and you're thinking, oh dear, M. Night Shyamalan. Well, you remember we reviewed Split, and Alan, I felt like he was coming back from the brink of thinking that every movie he touched was automatically going to be gold. But he made Split, which we were favorable on, had some issues.
You actually liked it better than I did.
I did.
Which was surprising.
Which leads up to he released a trailer for his newest film coming out in January.
Yeah.
Glass. So this is a continuation of characters that he developed way back when he was still making mega movies. Unbreakable with Bruce Willis. Also brings back a character from last year's Split. In what's the guy's name? Who's I can't remember his name. Big actor, but was in Split and played the bad guy. Yes, him.
Right, that guy.
James McAvoy.
James McAvoy.
So we have James McAvoy, and then we have Bruce Willis's character and Samuel L. Jackson's character from Unbreakable.
So it's a merging of Unbreakable and Split into this new movie.
Right, and Glass is the title of the movie and also the name of Samuel L. Jackson's character. So, interestingly enough, going full-on geek, I remember when we have talked about M. Night Shyamalan in the past and his career. I think you may have recommended Unbreakable at one point.
It was actually one of my very first recommendations on this show.
And kind of the sorrow that was on your face when you discussed how you really thought it was a good movie, and he'd originally conceived it to be kind of a trilogy, and that had fallen by the wayside, and too bad because he went on to make Signs and Lady in the Water and The Last Airbender.
Nobody liked the ending of Unbreakable. So,
and what's the one that's about the wind blowing in the trees?
The Happening.
The Happening. Yeah. So
boy,
he's
I will say The Happening, probably one of my favorite movie-going experiences in a theater.
But not
because the movie was any good.
That was enjoyable.
Yeah, it was.
So, Yeah, so he's kind of had a little bit of a rut, but then he did bounce back with Split, and now he's making Glass. So
Well, I actually think it started with The Visit. I actually thought The Visit was pretty good for a kind of low budget, real simple,
horror
kind
film.
of not pumped up, big, not a lot made of the film.
Right.
I think that was his turn back. I think he's like, all right, kind of reset, start small, kind of go for the creepy films again. Let's build it up. He did The Visit, and then he did Split. And now he's got Glass coming out.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like, in a weird way, the original rumor, internet rumor of there supposedly being a trilogy. Maybe this is kind of the fruition of all that. And the trailer I thought was awesome. The way it starts, the way it's edited, the visuals in the movie look great. The poster that they have up on the internet for Glass, I am all in. I am excited about it.
I am absolutely with you. It's my favorite of the trailers. It's the film of the 4 that I'm the most excited about. I actually watched Unbreakable again. I was thinking about making that my recommendation, but I realized that was my recommendation early on in the show, and I don't want to repeat if I can help it. But I will say Unbreakable, I think it's a damn good film. Yeah. And I know people had such an issue with the ending.
Right. The ending is what people really...
Well, really, because you think about it, he had just come off of The Sixth Sense and blew people's minds with twist ending and all the other stuff. Right. You go into Unbreakable, and there is a twist.
Right.
But it just ends. It ends with a title. I mean, words on the screen, a title card saying what happens next. And I could just hear everybody in the theater being like, "Oh, are you kidding me?" And then the screen went to credits, and everybody's like, "Oh man, I felt like I just got so gypped out of this."
Sure.
I loved it because I'm like, no, this is like the way it would totally happen if these people were really had superpowers in the real world. I mean, this is how it would happen. And it was great. So I actually watched Unbreakable again the other night. Still love it. I think it's probably Shyamalan's best film in my mind, as far as the one I respond to the most, because he takes his time with it, and it's just it's not concerned about trying to rush things or build up spectacle. It's all about telling the story and letting the story breathe, which is great for me. So I'm terribly excited about Glass. Split, I was not as enthusiastic as you were. I had some issues with the way I think the reason I got a little away from Split is because at the end I felt like they were going a little too comic booky and cartoony, where I was really happy when it was very grounded and more of a realism.
Right.
My only concern with Glass is I feel like there's a chance they may be amping up the comic book side of it more than I would like. Not that I would say that make it a bad movie, but just what I really respond to in Unbreakable is the realism about everything. So if they can find a good balance, if you can find a good balance between, yes, it's 3 people that have some belief that they're superheroes or these abilities, and still some grounded in realism, then I think it would really work. So I'm very excited.
I think amping up comic bookiness maybe wouldn't bother me too much, but I will say, I hadn't thought I had any reservations. I was all hyped, but sitting here talking to you, the one thing that I think could easily ruin it, and I think it would be amazing if he decided not to do it, just make this movie. We kind of already know these characters. Make it, have it end, and don't try to do a twist. Just have it be standard. Because you've already got your interesting people that you've developed and everything, and we get it. We don't need a twist to make this movie interesting. We already know the storylines of everybody because we've seen 2 entire movies about them. So just make, you know what I mean? That could be my cringe moment, is if I hear there's a surprise about oh no, why not just make a movie stand on its own? So if he puts one in there, I guess, and it works, awesome. He's back to his original formula. But I don't know. I guess that would be my one reservation. But other than that, I'm like you. I'm pretty hyped. I can't wait for January.
That, or if if it's part of if it is part of a trilogy and it tries to leave on a cliffhanger or something like that. I mean, trying to do the whole shared universe thing more. That could be a concern too. I don't know. The only thing that's wrong with this whole situation is that we're getting a lot of hype built up for this film.
True.
Where Split didn't have any hype.
Right.
Unbreakable had hype, and I think that's what caused people to not respond to it very well.
Sure.
Split, I don't think really had any hype. If anything, it had negative hype. It's it's Shyamalan
he's coming out with another movie,
doing something kind of look at what James McAvoy's doing. It looks kind of ridiculous and all, but then you see it and you're like, yeah, okay, it worked. This one's going in with a lot of anticipation now.
Right.
That could be bad. So
Yeah.
we'll definitely see. If you get a chance, you need to check out Alex Ross. I don't know if you're familiar with him as an artist. He is a comic book artist. He does a lot of covers of comic books,
Okay.
and they're all painted, like painted art.
Okay.
And he did a painted art poster for Glass, the movie. It's awesome. Okay, I'll show it to you after the show because it's not really, you as listeners can't really see what I'm saying. My only concern is I'm looking at some of the images in this poster and kind of gives me a little bit of a feel of maybe where they're going with the film. It could be interesting. So not spoiler. No. It's not spoiler. I don't think so at all. But it kind of gives you a little bit of a tone of where they're going, and I think that's interesting. So, I'm in terms of excitement level for the 4 trailers you just gave me.
Right.
Aquaman is least. I will say Godzilla is still a big bump up from Aquaman, but still third of the list because I probably feel like I'm hyping it up more in my head than I should be. Shazam is actually second because I'm generally interested in seeing what they do with it.
Okay.
And then Glass is, yes, definitely my most anticipated. Eager after watching these trailers.
Okay.
Cool.
My ranking, I think, is the exact same with the exception of Glass and Shazam are way up, and then Godzilla. And
I've got Godzilla as a
down,
tight third with the other two,
Sure.
where you push Godzilla down further down the list.
So that's my contribution to the news segment.
Yeah,
Alan,
very nice. I've got one other item. I know we spent a lot of time on the trailer, so I don't want to kind of go too long on this stuff, but I do have one interesting storyline. Okay, Chris, there were 2 Charlie's Angels movies made back
Charlie's
in the early
Angels
2000s.
and Charlie's Angels Full Throttle,
Yes.
both directed by Mick G.
Mick G, right.
Mm-hmm.
Cameron Diaz, Drew Barrymore, and Lucy Liu.
Yes.
Okay,
And I've
with,
actually seen both of them.
With Bill Murray as Bosley.
Correct.
So, would it surprise you, and I'm sure the
Yes.
answer is no, would it surprise you that if they were going to reboot Charlie's Angels?
Okay. No. I was
Yeah.
going to say, yes, it would surprise me if they were doing a third installment and
No.
all the same people
Nope.
are on there. And I'm
That's
like,
not
yeah,
happening.
that's pretty surprising.
No, they are rebooting.
Okay.
Now, that by itself, that
And they're all going to be guys. So Charlie's Angels, the person behind the microphone that you never see, will be like Melissa McCarthy, but then all the other people will just be like, yes, awesome.
would actually be pretty good.
It's like the reverse Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Okay. Write your letters of controversy to us now.
Right.
So, okay, normally if you show me a headline as I'm flipping through movie news and it says Charlie's Angels reboot, I'd be like, okay, moving on.
Right.
But a couple things jumped out I thought were interesting. One, the director, Elizabeth Banks. She's the actress, comedian.
She did the
She did like
acapella
the
movies, Pitch
she did
Perfect
one.
movies.
She did one of the recent Pitch Perfect.
I don't know
if she did all of
directed,
them.
but she was in it.
She was in it, but she did direct one of them.
Okay.
She absolutely did direct one of them. I just don't remember which one.
Okay.
But of course, she's an actress. Wet Hot American Summer. She's had a lot of other parts. She was in the Brian Wilson film,
Right.
that Love and Mercy, which I think we both liked.
We did.
She's directing it, and she's also going to be one of the play one of the parts. She's not playing one of the angels.
Okay.
She's playing Bosley. So Bosley is getting gender swapped in this film. But the angels are still angels. They're still females.
Sure.
And 2 of the names I really couldn't tell you anything about. One of
Kate
them
McKinnon, one of them? No.
One of them is Naomi Scott. She's supposedly going to be in that live action Aladdin film that they're making for Disney.
Okay.
Another one is Ella Balinski, which I know absolutely nothing about. But the third one, Kristen Stewart. Now that in itself got me a little interested because I will say, even though,
She's doing outright comedy.
well, I don't know. I don't even think this is going to be comedy.
Okay.
I think this is going to be a straight. I think they're going to go more serious with this. None of the 3 of them are comedians.
Okay.
Elizabeth Banks has comedy
Has done
chops,
comedy.
but she's not one of the 3 lead actresses. So they may be going pretty serious on this. Who knows? But Kristen Stewart, I mentioned Kristen Stewart just because I think she's made some interesting choices and roles in the last several years.
Oh, absolutely.
And she hasn't done junk in quite a while since she walked away from the Twilight stuff. Everything else she's
Which,
done.
why wouldn't she finish those? Because that was huge paychecks.
Exactly.
So,
but
yeah.
since then,
Right.
She's worked with a lot of independent filmmakers, a lot of auteurs, done some really personal shopper.
Yeah. She was in Adventureland.
What's the one she did with? Oh, shoot. I'm drawing a blank. But anyway, interesting films all the way around. So to hear that she's going to be set with these other two interesting actresses to play Charlie's Angels, I thought was kind of interesting. And what the synopsis they're already saying, even though they're just now working on the film, is that it's going to be focusing on the next generation of angels still working for the mysterious Charlie. But since then, the agency has grown considerably and gone global, providing security and intelligence services to a wide variety of private clients with offices worldwide. So this film will focus on one of those teams.
Huh.
Again, a lot of interest to it just because Elizabeth Banks is a director. You think comedy, but then you think Kristen Stewart. If they do go comedy, how is Kristen Stewart going to do with comedy, and how do you make that work?
It seems like that premise set up is just so they can have the original Angels make a cameo, because it's like, this is a division of them.
Could be.
So.
But also Kristen Stewart getting back into what probably is being talked about as a franchise type thing again.
Yeah,
so that's another interesting twist on it.
Yeah.
So again, not anything I normally would have called to our attention, but when I saw the couple names attached to it, I'm like, all right, there could be something here.
Fair enough.
Full disclosure, I liked the first Charlie's Angels with McG. I had a fun time with that movie. It was dumb. It was
kind of like
over the top. But it was fun.
Yeah, it was kind of like a 21 Jump Street.
It was. And I had a really good time with it. I thought, and actually thought, who was it? Who played the bad guy in that?
Was it Sam Rockwell?
Yeah, Sam Rockwell. And he was so good in that.
Yeah.
You just had a good time. Now, I don't even remember seeing the second one. I couldn't tell you anything about it.
I did see it, but I don't remember anything about it.
I mean, I'm sorry, but with that first one, the McG one, you start a film with LL Cool J, who turns out to be one of the angels in disguise, on an airplane jumping out of it. I mean, sorry, it started out ridiculous and it just stayed fun the whole film. So I had a good time with it.
Fair enough.
All right. I think that's enough news. We've talked about a lot of interesting upcoming films that we'll be keeping our eyes on. I also invite our listeners, if you have an interesting film project you hear that's coming down the pike that you want us to talk about or give some comments on, send us a note. Let us know. We'd love to address it in the news section. So, Chris, let's wrap up with our recommendations. This is where, in the show, Chris and I always try to leave the episode with one recommendation of a film that we think you ought to check out or go back and revisit if you haven't had a chance. I will go ahead and tell you, Chris, I'm struggling. I've gone through my movie list, and I think I've recommended all the films I really want to recommend that we haven't talked about, so I don't know where else to go. So I'm kind of cheating on mine a little bit, but let me have you do yours first.
Okay.
What's your recommendation?
So I'm going to recommend a film from 2014, A Most Violent Year. Actually, I think it was released maybe in January, so it just skipped. But Most Violent Year, it's billed as a crime, drama, thriller. And when I saw the trailers for it, it stars Oscar Isaac, which I do like him, and Jessica Chastain, but it just seemed to be a very formulaic crime, drama, thriller, and so I wasn't really interested in it. The plot synopsis is it takes place in New York in 1981, New York City, and an ambitious immigrant, who would be Oscar Isaac in this part, fights to protect his business and his family during the most dangerous year in the city's history. So there's just a lot of crime, a lot of mafia activity, a lot of stuff going on. So the movie just, I was kind of like, I don't feel like I need to see that. Now, obviously I'm recommending it. Having seen it, it's basically like The Sopranos, except instead of Satriale's meat place and a strip club, you're doing oil, because that's heating oil is what this guy's trying to, make his business survive on. So, and I guess it's maybe loosely based on somebody that this was happening to, not really sure. It is interesting, and Oscar Isaac gives a really good performance. A lot of the shots even reminded me of The Sopranos, because he's driving across bridges in a car, and you see him through the window, and it's just very similar type cinematography going on.
Sure.
But the movie did chug along. I recommend it. It's over 2 hours long, but I felt like it moved pretty fast. It's not an action movie, but it is kind of, you're wondering what's going on, and it is pretty intense. I will say one of the things that kind of sticks out too is there's a sequence where his trucks that are carrying all this really expensive oil keep getting stolen. And he's kind of like, what's going on here? And it creates a lot of tension.
Yeah.
Well, at one point, he sees one being stolen and he chases after it. And that chasing of a car chasing a giant tanker is it's not even that long, but it's pretty intense. And I'd never seen anything quite like that.
Wow, interesting.
So yeah, A Most Violent Year with Oscar Isaac. I guess if you're an Oscar Isaac completist as well and want to see a lot of his work.
Yes, we know you're out there, some of you.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
You
I
have your
think
checklist.
I think I've seen most of everything he's been in. So that was the other reason I was like, wait, there was that film that came out that I was kind of like, I should check it out. And I was pleased.
Wasn't there a trailer last night in front of...
There's a new movie that he's coming out doing about like a World War II.
Yeah,
Like he's tracking down a former member of the Third Reich. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So,
Yeah.
okay, good. A Most Violent Year. I've not seen it. It's been kind of one of those floating on my watch list for a really long time, so I'll have to try to check that out now with that recommendation.
Okay.
So like I said, Chris, my recommendation, I am cheating because honestly, I'm struggling. Somehow I need to go back and really dig into what movies I've actually really seen in the past because my letterbox list is letting me down right now. All the ones, basically I've tried to say any film that I give at least a 3.5 or more stars to that we haven't talked about in the show, we didn't review together already, is fair game for the recommendations.
Gotcha.
I'm kind of running thin. Any of the ones I've got left are like big films that people know, and just there's no point in me coming back and recommending it. So I'm cheating. We talked about Mission Impossible Fallout earlier in the show, and I had a good time with it. Thought it was fun, but during the conversation, I mentioned how Mission Impossible 3 is my favorite.
Okay.
I did go back and watch some of Mission Impossible 3 the other night to see if my opinions of it still hold up.
Okay, fair enough.
Because, all these groups are putting out these lists of ranking the Mission Impossible movies. Variety, I tell you, Variety, I read your news every day. I think you're a great news source, but you put out a list of the Mission Impossible films, ranking them, and you put Mission Impossible 3 last.
Really?
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. I went back and watched it the other night in preparation for Fallout, and just because I remember it being really good and one of my favorites. Does it have some issues? Sure. But I'll tell you what, for a first-time directorial effort for a film by Mr. J.J. Abrams, who had been doing TV with Felicity and Alias up until that point, and I still say the best Mission Impossible villain, I say probably one of the better villains of an action movie in any franchise.
Wow.
Philip Seymour Hoffman, I think, is wonderful in this role.
Okay.
The film just has a really great style to it. You imagine these Mission Impossible movies. You start out with Brian De Palma's film, which is all about spy, intrigue, and all that. Confusing, but spy, intrigue, got it nailed down. Then it went to John Woo, and it was all just action. Throw away all that Mission Impossible stuff we remember. Let's just get Tom Cruise on a motorcycle looking badass and fighting people. Mission Impossible 3 was kind of to right the ship a little bit. Let's get it back on this path of there's truly like an intelligence agency, and we actually go out and do these missions, and we're spies and all that. So I think it gets all that right. And also the fact that it humanizes Ethan Hunt probably more than we've seen in any other film. He's got a wife. He's got a life that he's kind of stepped away from the spy game to be more of an instructor. His wife doesn't really know what he does during the day. She thinks he does something different. It's an interesting film. And I will say the whole scene, and I think it's maybe taking place at the Vatican or around there, but it's like a big party scene with them trying to basically swap out Philip Seymour Hoffman and try to pose as him using the whole face mask technology. It's the best version of that in any of these films where you actually see them doing what they need to do to really enact this really complex plan. But they're also being human while they're doing it. I don't know, just something about it. J.J. Abrams just gets how to make people seem human with their dialogue and with how comfortable they are with one another as friends. The movie just works for me. It loses some of its steam towards the end. The ending is not as impactful as it could be. But I think it's a really, really well done action film. One of my favorites and definitely the best of the series as far as I'm concerned. So if you go see Fallout and you haven't seen Mission Impossible 3, go back and check it out and see if all that super praise for this new Mission Impossible is really saying it's the best of all time. Just go back and see number 3 and tell me what you think for sure. I think it's got a lot going for it. So now I just got to figure out what to recommend for next episode, Chris. I've got to go back and really just check. I got to go back and check out some older films that I've seen and refresh my memory on some of these. So All right. Well, that's our show for today. So we had recommendations of most violent year. Chris recommended. I recommended Mission Impossible 3. For those of you that have just checked out Fallout and want to see what I consider to be maybe slightly better Mission Impossible film. And then, of course, we had our reviews of Mission Impossible Fallout and Won't You Be My Neighbor, the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood documentary. And then some news items, a lot of trailers we went through and talked about. It sounds like we got some interesting films we're going to be keeping our eye on going forward. So, Chris, we've thrown a lot of content out there, a lot of opinions, a lot of thoughts. If somebody agrees or disagrees with anything we said at any course in the show, how should they go about getting a hold of us?
Best way is to send an email at info@themesh.tv and just mention Footcandle Films in the subject line and tell us what we got wrong, why Aquaman is going to be the greatest movie of all time with the greatest stunt effects by Jason Momoa.
Aquaman overtakes Mission Impossible Fallout of the best action movie of all time.
Right, because I'm sure all the stuff in the trailer was actual stunts. I'm sure none of that was CGI.
They actually were underwater for all those
all
scenes.
those creatures are real too. Mm-hmm. So, but yes, info@themesh.tv is a good way to let us know what you think of the show. Also, if you happen to be in iTunes for whatever reason, we would always appreciate a star rating, because it helps us reach more listeners. And also, big news, of course, Footcandle Film Festival, which will be September 28th through the 30th. Go to footcandlefilmfestival.com. We have our lineup on there, so you can look at the films that we'll be bringing in September. We've got 37 films, 26 shorts, some narratives, some documentaries. It's going to be a great time. We're going to have filmmakers come in to have a Q&A after their films. Should be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to it. It's the fourth go round this time, so we're thinking it's going to be even bigger and better than the first three. So we're really looking forward to it. We encourage you to come join us if you can.
Yeah, it's going to be a great weekend in Western North Carolina. And we do encourage you. Like we said, it's your fourth year. So we're excited. What do we say, 37 films?
37 films, or 37, 38. So we're
close to 38 films that we're sharing over the course of really 3 to 4 days of a festival weekend. And it's going to be great. We're excited about it. Yeah, as Chris said, footcandlefilmfestival.com is where you want to go to not only see lineup, but probably by the time you're reading this, tickets may be on sale as well too. So we're pretty close to it anyway. So go and check it out. If they're not, by early part of August, they will be on sale. So we encourage you to go check them out and come join us if you can. We'd love to have you. And if you are going to come into town for the festival for any reason, one day, the whole weekend, whatever, drop us a note and let us know, because we'd love to meet anybody who's coming from outside of the area, especially if any of our listeners are wanting to join us. Let us know. We'd love to find out and kind of make sure we get a chance to meet you when you come out. So,
absolutely.
All right. Chris, well, I guess we will go ahead and wrap up the show. Thanks everybody for listening. And this has been Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv, our podcast network. Encourage you to check out other shows on the Mesh Network as well. That's themesh.tv. And we will talk to you next time.
See you in the ticket line.
Watch films out of the reverence of the heritage of an art. Watch films through the courtesy of Footcandle Film Society.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.